Our next speaker is going to be Brother Maksud Javadov. He is a journalist, educator, and linguistic who speaks 5 languages. He will talk about the history of Muslims in Canada. Please welcome Brother Maksud.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you for having me. My topic will not be so exciting as Brother Hassam's, but I'll try to make it interesting. Now, in the Quranic concept, there is an urge to study history, because in the 11th chapter of the Quran, God commands people to learn from history. So I'm going to be talking about the general aspect, the general information about early Muslims in Canada. Now, the thing is, Muslims arrived to Canada as early as 1851, and what that indicates is that Muslims, just like any other ethnic group here in Canada, we've come here long ago. Like everybody came to this land which had original inhabitants. Okay, it's not like people came here and this land was empty and they civilized it and they, made it a place to live. It was a place that had native inhabitants here, and we all know the history, and we must always acknowledge that history. So Muslims, just like any other ethnic group, came and settled here. So, while you often hear from many Islamophobes, you will hear, oh, you don't belong here. Well, technically speaking, we're all immigrants here. And Muslims and non-Muslims are no different in this aspect. And it's always important to highlight that there were native people here. They had their civilization. They had their land. This is their land. Now, one of the earliest people who've come to Canada were Lebanese merchants. And one of them was a famous businessman who moved to Edmonton. Let me just get his name right for you guys. Ahmed Ali Awid, who arrived in 1901. Now, what is important to remember from this story is that he became a successful merchant, a successful businessman, and he grew his business with a Jewish partner. His business partner was Jewish. This is another aspect of the fact that in Canada, this is a place where Jews and Muslims, Christians, and people of other religions can coexist and cooperate. As somebody who grew up in Europe, Muslims are very ghettoized in Europe in comparison to Canada. Now, in this community, from the early on, when Muslims arrived here, in fact, one of the first Muslims who came and who were registered, they were not from the Middle East. They were from Scotland. Right? They identified themselves as Mohammedans when they were registered in the 1800s or late 1800s, I believe. So it's not that all Muslims came from the Middle East to take this place over or something. There were actually Anglo-Saxon Muslims who came here. Another aspect is that this land attracted all sorts of people, and one of the type of people that attracted were intellectuals and activists. And there was a famous incident in 1914 called the Komagata Maru incident, where a group of Sikh Muslims came to ask for, the group of Sikhs, and there were Muslims among them, to ask for asylum. And one of them was a famous Muslim anti-imperialist activist and writer. His name is Maulana Barakatullah. And these people were denied asylum. They were returned back to India. And many of them were murdered upon arrival. Right? And by the way, if I remember correctly, in 2016, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau apologized for that incident. Another thing which is to appreciate about this land is that they do face the historical injustices that have, been perpetrated by the system here. In Muslim lands, for example, there have been a lot of injustices perpetrated against other Muslims, but I think we're still some time away until we see heads of state apologize for some sort of action that was done against others. Well, there are cases like this, but they're more unfortunately of an exception rather than the norm, and this should be a norm. The other aspect I want to talk about is the World War I. Now, any ideology, any thought, any trend can be taken to an extreme, whether it's a secular thought or a religious thought. And today, we shouldn't be proud of Muslims who go and join regressive organizations and join wars of, become proxies of others, and they join wars which are unjust. Muslims have enlisted in this country in World War I. And yes, they served their country and so on, but if we study history, if we know anything about World War I, it was an unjust war. It was an imperialist war as well. So it's another example to maybe think about in these critical times, how Muslims go participate in certain conflicts where they should not be participating. And we're not proud of that, but they also participated in imperialist conflicts, which, were unjust. If you study World War I, in my opinion, it would be clear that World War I was a very, very unnecessary armed conflict. Just want to summarize with the idea that today Muslims play an important role in this country. We are present in every segment of society here. I remember first time when I came from Europe to Canada, when I landed in the airport and I saw a customs officer in hijab. It was just so shocking, because I know that in Austria, where I grew up, you would never see that. Okay, you would never see that. So there are positive changes. We have a voice here, and I think we should also appreciate this fact that there is socio-political space for Muslims to grow. We should use it wisely. It doesn't mean we should compromise our morals, compromise our ideals. But we should also recognize the fact that we live in a non-Muslim society, but in a society where there is a societal mentality to agree to disagree. We have a claim to this country just like anyone else, because our history goes way back to 1800s, just like of many other immigrant groups. We are no less than them. And I think it was informative just to add, to give credit. A lot of this information came from one of the coolest historians of GTA, Hassan Munir himself. So I based this presentation on his material. And thank you very much for your attention.